When you think of the Battle of Bunker Hill, what comes to mind? Probably a lot of chaos, smoke, and redcoats. But right at the center of that storm, there was one man holding it all together, Colonel William Prescott. He was this towering figure at a pivotal moment, but honestly, his full story often gets left in the shadows. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and really get to know the man behind the legend. Just try to picture the scene. It's almost hard to believe. You've got these colonial farmers and merchants, totally exhausted from digging a fort all night long, and they're peering over these mounds of packed earth. And coming right at them, in perfect, terrifying lines, are the British regulars, the redcoats. They're expecting to just sweep this rabble off the field in a matter of minutes. The tension must have been unbelievable. And this is where we get our first real look at the man in charge. As cannonballs start hitting the mark, causing just gruesome casualties, Prescott doesn't cower, he doesn't duck, he gets up on the wall. The man was over 6 feet tall, so he was making himself a giant target, just walking calmly among his men, cracking jokes, and steadying their nerves. I mean, that is the definition of leadership under fire.
So, what kind of person does that? Where does that kind of extraordinary calm even come from? Well, to understand the commander on that wall, we have to look at the life that made him, a life spent on the American frontier.
See, Prescott was no rookie. He was born right on the frontier, and he was already a soldier by the time he was 19, serving the British Crown in 2 huge wars. He was a seasoned veteran, a really experienced officer who had already proven his skill and his bravery long before anyone was even thinking about a revolution. And this part, to me, is just fascinating. It's all about the choice he made. After the French and Indian War, the British were so impressed with him that they offered him a permanent commission in their army. This was a ticket to prestige, to power, and he turned it down. Nope. He chose to go home, to be a farmer, and to serve his community. That tells you everything you need to know, right? His loyalty wasn't to the empire, it was to his neighbors. He was a citizen soldier through and through. Okay, so let's jump back to that fateful night in 1775. After the shots were fired at Lexington and Concord, thousands of colonial militia have the British Army basically trapped in Boston. To make that siege work, the Americans knew they needed to control the high ground. And for that absolutely critical mission, they turned to Colonel Prescott. Okay, so check out this map. You've got Boston here, filled with British troops. And right over here, you see the Charlestown Peninsula. Whoever controls these hills, Bunker Hill and Breed's Hill, basically controls the whole show. You have a commanding view of the city and the harbor. It was the strategic key to the entire siege. Prescott's job, take it and hold it. And this is where things get a little complicated. The official orders from command were to fortify Bunker Hill, which was taller and easier to defend. But somewhere in the middle of the night, a decision was made to go to the smaller Breed's Hill instead. So why the change of plans? Because it was closer to Boston. It was a much more aggressive, in-your-face kind of move. Building a fort on Breed's Hill wasn't just defense. It was an open challenge. It guaranteed a fight. So the sun comes up, and you can just imagine the shock on the British side when they see this fort that basically appeared out of nowhere. The battle is on. And right in the middle of the American line, inside that little dirt fort, is Colonel Prescott, about to give one of the most famous orders in all of military history. Now look, there is always some debate among historians about who exactly said these famous words, but all the accounts are clear on one thing. Colonel Prescott was the one giving the orders in that readout. The strategy here was simple and absolutely brutal. His men had very little ammunition. Every single shot had to count. That meant they had to let the most powerful army in the world march right up to their doorstep before they could finally open fire. And oh boy, did it work. That first wave of redcoats just shattered by a single coordinated volley. They regrouped, charged again, and were cut down and broken a second time. It was only on that third assault, when the Americans had literally run out of gunpowder, that the fort was finally overrun in a desperate hand-to-hand fight. And even when it was all falling apart, when the redoubt was being overrun, Prescott refused to run. He was one of the very last men to leave that fort, using his ceremonial sword, which was just a symbol of his rank, not a real weapon, to fend off British bayonets while his man got away. Sure, the British flag was flying on that hill by the end of the day, but wow, the cost. They suffered over 1,000 casualties. Think about that. That's more than 40% of their entire attacking force.
One British general famously said that a few more victories like that one and they'd lose the whole war. The colonists proved they could go toe-to-toe with the best. For most people, a day like that would be the story of their life, right? The end. But for Prescott, that battle was just one chapter in a long, long career of service to the cause of independence.
Not Prescott. He went right on to command a regiment in the new Continental Army. He fought in the defense of New York, where he even earned a commendation from George Washington himself for his tactical skill during a really tough retreat. And he was there as a volunteer to see one of the biggest turning points of the whole war, the British surrender at Saratoga. And you know what's really cool? He's even hiding in plain sight in one of the most famous paintings of the Revolution. This is John Trumbull's painting of the surrender at Saratoga, and it hangs in the U.S. Capitol. And if you look closely, right there, behind the famous Captain Morgan, stands Colonel William Prescott, the citizen soldier from Pepperell, watching a victory he helped make happen.
But here's the thing. If we only talk about the battles, we're missing the real story of who this guy was. To truly get Prescott, we have to look past the military record and at the quiet things he did that really showed his character. That term, citizen soldier, it fits him perfectly. He wasn't some professional warrior chasing glory. He was a farmer who picked up a weapon when his home, his neighbors, and his principles needed defending. And it turns out those principles went way beyond the battlefield.
We tend to remember our heroes with big bronze statues, right? And Prescott has one, honoring his heroism at Bunker Hill. But I think there's another document, a simple piece of paper that tells you more about his character than any statue ever could. A petition that he signed.
This is a petition to the Massachusetts legislature, signed by Prescott and 13 of his fellow officers. It's to formally recognize the incredible bravery of a man named Salem Poor, a free black man who fought at Bunker Hill. At a time when African Americans were denied even the most basic rights, Prescott put his name on paper, officially declaring him a hero, an excellent soldier who deserved to be rewarded. It was a remarkable statement about judging a person by their courage and their character.
So it really makes you think, doesn't it? We remember Colonel Prescott for that defiant stand on Breed's Hill, and we should. But maybe his real legacy is the sum of all his choices. The choice to be a citizen instead of a courtier, a farmer instead of a career general, and a man who saw heroism and honor in a fellow soldier no matter the color of his skin.